So here now we have a contemporary non-milk group. They have an identical postpartum interval, so there's no confounding issues, if you like, and no confounding effects associated with heifers, for example, having a virgin tract, or with dry cows that might be 300, 400 days postpartum. These animals were identical up to the day they calved, and only subsequently they were different. We repeated the experiment. We looked at a variety of metabolic measures. We transferred embryos to the oviducts on various times postpartum to look at development. I know you can't read this from back there, but it's just to make the point that even when you do this, so you have cows that are identical up to the day of calving, once you dry one group off and milk the other group, they still become very different animals, as you can imagine. So this is body weight change. So these are the lactating group, always on the bottom, and the non-lactating group. Body condition score, you can see it actually increased here in the non-lactating group. Milk yield, obviously, there's no milk yield data for the non-lactating group. IGF-1 concentrations were dramatically different, so a precipitous decline in IGF-1 at calving, and basically the levels remained quite low in the lactating group, whereas in the non-lactating group they recovered extremely quickly. And so this is where people talk about the decoupling of the IGF growth hormone axis. Glucose, it has a typical pattern here where you get a precipitous spike at calving, then a rapid decline after calving, and that decline was more precipitous and deeper in lactating cows than non-lactating, presumably due to the use of glucose in milk formation, milk production. Insulin, in a way, mirrored IGF-1. NEFA concentrations, so non-esterified fatty acids, the indication that the cow was basically mobilizing her body fat to try and beat the deficit that in terms of energy intake and energy output in milk. So you can see in the non-lactating group, they basically, NEFAs returned to normal levels, or if you like, pre-calving levels, rapidly after calving. And I should point out, and again, sorry, you can't read it from back there, calving is here. Day 0 is here. Okay, so I should have said we took samples 2 weeks before calving up to 90 days after calving. Okay, so in the lactating group, you can see there's an elevated period of NEFAs here going up to about day 42 to 45 postpartum, indicating the cow was mobilizing her body reserves. That doesn't happen in the non-lactating group. And similarly, BHBs are higher in the lactating than the non-lactating group. So don't worry too much about the detail. The point is we're dealing with a very different type of a uterus and an animal in a metabolic, from a metabolic standpoint. And just one other thing to mention is that in some other studies from Ireland, from Moore Park in the south of Ireland, one of the main factors, if they had to finger 2 things that predict subsequent fertility, one of them is IGF pattern, how quickly cows recover the IGF profile, and secondly, dry matter intake. Those 2 things predict with the greatest confidence subsequent fertility. Okay, so what about embryo development? So in this case, we had a similar number, 10 dry cows, 11 lactating cows. We transferred, in this case, about 65 embryos to each oviduct. That's totally a function of how many embryos we can make in a week. In the dry cows, we recovered about 65% of the structures. In the lactating cows, the milking cows, we recovered about 57%. And if you look at the end here, in the dry cows in this study, 50% of the embryos we put in formed blastocysts. In the non-lactating group, in the lactating group, about 30% formed blastocysts. So again, just crude evidence, if you like, that there is a difference in the ability of the reproductive tract of the postpartum lactating cow to support early embryo development. And this might come back to some of the data that I showed you from Roberto Sartori, which was generated in single ovulating dairy cows that suggested that a significant amount of embryo loss occurs before day 7 in those cows.